Did you ever see that movie, My Fair Lady? I'm telling you, just that one song that Professor Henry Higgins sings in it is worth the price of the whole movie, especially if you're interested in the male-female relationship. He says, why can't a woman be like a man? Men are so reasonable, so easy to understand. Well, it is easy for one man to understand another man, but for a man to understand a woman, or for a woman to understand a man, that is another challenge. And that's what you need to do. You need to understand, you need to meet that challenge and understand why a woman can't be like a man. And then I love it in the movie when she begins to sing, "Just You Wait, Henry Higgins, just you wait." And you see her vengeance because he doesn't understand her. He doesn't care. He doesn't know how to relate to her because she's a woman. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Man, woman, what's the difference? Have you ever noticed that before you get married, you find the commonalities that you have and you just absolutely love them? And it's almost as if there's no differences between you whatsoever. But then you get married. Then you start living together. And that should be the order, by the way. First marriage, and then you start living together. And then you begin to discover, hey, what's wrong with this person? What's wrong with her? She doesn't think like I think. Or she says, he doesn't feel like I feel. He's not sensitive. He's not caring. And he thinks he's perfectly, totally, absolutely sensitive and caring. And he's just missing it totally, completely, absolutely. Well, I think it's because we really don't stop to think about our creation. Remember, we talked last week about the purpose of creation, that we're people with worth and sense and value, and we're that way because God made us that way. He gave us good sense. He put us into His image. He made us of worth and value because He created us. He created us for His purpose. He created us for His pleasure. We're not an accident. Our lives have significance. And yet we come together with another person, and sometimes because we're not alike, we begin to put down the other person. We begin to look at them and say, hey, what is wrong with you? Because you're not like me. And especially this happens between men and women. And we forget that not only do we have to know and understand the purpose of our creation to have a good marriage, but we have to understand the purpose of our sexuality. And the purpose of our sexuality goes far beyond just that sexual union, the male and the female coming together and becoming one flesh. But there is a union that needs to come between, so to speak, the soul and understanding one another. We need to understand that when God made them, He made them distinctively different. Remember, we looked at Genesis chapter 2, and we saw that man was created first. And then on that same day, at a later point, after Adam had named all the animals, and there was not a helper or a helpmeet, a counterpart, a complementer, suitable for Adam, then God brought a deep sleep over Adam. And when he went into that deep sleep, God went in and removed the rib out of man and created a woman, and then He brought her to Adam. I mean, and he looked at her. Adam looked at her and he went, whoa. I mean, whoa, this is woman. And she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Really, it says this is Isha. And so she is taken out of man, and she is delightfully, delightfully different. And first of all, when you look at a man and a woman, you've got to see that just skeletally, they are different. Women have shorter legs, and they have longer trunks. And that's why many times you'll find a woman deciding, hey, the jeans are cheaper with the men, so I'm going to go in the men's department and get them. And she goes in and she pulls them on, and the legs are a little bit long, but she can shorten those. But when she gets to the trunk, I mean, she pulls them up, and it just doesn't work. Why? God made us distinctively male and distinctively female. Unfortunately, a woman has a larger stomach. A woman has larger kidneys. A woman has a larger liver. But when it comes to lungs and that power, that lung power, her lungs are smaller. So God made us different. When you come to men, men excel women in brute strength by 50%. Why? Because God made man and He made woman and He made them different, and He made them different for a purpose. And we're going to see that. But let's just talk about emotionally. Emotionally, the woman has a larger thyroid, and that makes her more emotional. And that's why you find men, and they just, you know, they're going along many times at this steady, steady stream, and here we are going up and down, and especially during certain times of the month, there are hormonal changes. And if men could just begin to understand, hey, our hormones really have a lot to do with the way we act and the way that we react. I just know about when I met Jack and we got married, and it was our first Christmas. And I mean, we got married December 17th, and then it was Christmas. And I had 2 boys. I had been married, I had been divorced, I became a child of God, a true Christian, and then my husband committed suicide, and then I ended up marrying Jack. I was so excited about that Christmas. I had waited so long, and this was a Christian marriage, and everything was wonderful, and I was going along saying, aren't you excited? Aren't you excited? And he'd say, mm-hmm. I thought, no, you're not excited. And I'd say, you're not excited. And he'd say, yes, I am. You know, yes, I am. And he's just, they're not as emotional, they're not as volatile. But that's because God made man for a special role. Now, sometimes you find the opposites and don't go, oh, Horace, what have I done? Just know that there are differences between the men and the women. And listen, it's because of this large thyroid that I get cold and the man stays hot. I mean, you always have a battle of the thermostats, usually between a man and a woman, just because there is a difference. Now, what I want to do in this program is I want to go with you through some of those differences. And I want you to see those differences because I think it will help you understand each other better. Or at least that's what so many people have told me as I've taught on the subject. Now, when we look at Genesis chapter 2, I want you to see this word again. In verse 20, it says, and the man gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the sky, to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper suitable for him. And remember, I told you that word helper suitable, in the King James Version of the Bible, it's called a helpmeet. But what it means a counterpart, a complementer, a completer. In other words, here is man. Here are his weaknesses. Here is woman. Here are her strengths. And so what you do is you slot them in together, and then what you have is you have a couple that balances one another. And they balance one another, especially when they understand one another. Well, as you look at them, first of all, I want you to see that in God's mind, when He created them, if you'll think of a triangle, and if you'll think of the top of the triangle as God, and then think of each side of the base as the man and as the woman. So this is when He created them. He created them equal. 1 Peter chapter 3 tells a man that he is to live with his wife in an understanding way, since both of them are joint heirs of God. In other words, God is not partial to one sex over the other sex, although He made them different. And so as we look at this, we see that they're equal distance from God when you look at that triangle. All right, but then you have to understand, the first one that was created was man. All right, the second one that was created was woman. Woman was created for man. Woman was created from man, from man's side. And when God created them, God made man the protector over the woman. He also, although they're equal, he made man as the head of the woman. He made man the head of the woman, and then he tells us in 1 Corinthians 11, and we saw that last week, but the man could not exist apart from the woman, because after you get through with Adam and Eve, then every man and every woman has to be born in this world. So woman came from man, but man also came from woman. All right, now the next thing I want you to see is that man is the initiator. Man is to be the aggressive one. He made woman with all these emotional differences and this weakness of her flesh compared to the strength of a man. He made woman to be a responder. And I don't want to be crude, but I want you to see this. Even in the act of when a man and a woman come together in the act of intercourse, when they come together, it's the woman that is the receiver. It is the man that is the aggressor. And so if you can understand this, and if men especially, if you men can understand this, listen, you are to be the initiator. And women want men to be the initiator. I mean, most women do. Unless they've been brainwashed by the world, unless they believe some extreme feminist lie by women that haven't really heard how a man is supposed to treat a woman, or a woman that has been misused. A woman is a responder. And that's why many times when you look at a woman, it tells you a lot about the man, because he's the one that sets her up for greatness. He's the one that elevates her. And they have found in marriages that a woman, now hang on, because some of the things that I'm going to tell you as we do this series on marriage, some of these things are going to go against the grain, precious one. And they're going to go against the grain of your mind, the grain of your mind that has been formed and in a sense molded into the shape and the thinking of the world, and is contrary to the thinking of God, to the truth of the Word of God. But they found that women that are dependent upon their husbands, women, and I'm not talking about weak things, because there's nothing weak about me, I don't think. But even for all being so strong, and in my name, they say K means strong and determined. And I mean, it describes me exactly. And yet I want to respond to a man. I want a man who is strong. I want a man who's going to initiate things. And that's what women are looking for. And you know what's happened today is we've come up with passive men. But that's not the way God created them. They become passive in a self-defense mode because women have become so aggressive and they just go right over them. You know, when my boys were growing up, and I only had 3 sons, but when they were growing up, one of the things I told them before they could ever date, they had to be 16, and they had to know the difference between strange women and dumb men, because the Bible talks about strange women and dumb men. And a dumb man is a man that goes after a strange woman, a woman that's just out with all of her lusts. And I didn't want that to happen. But I would have girls that were calling my sons all the time. And I would pick up the phone a lot of times because I answered the phone. And I would just stop and say to them, darling, that's not the way to attract my son. You see, nice girls, and that was a long time ago, I grant you, but nice girls don't call men on the phone. My son is very, very strong. My sons are very, very strong. My sons know what they want. And if my sons want to talk to you, they will call you. So sometimes it got to be, so I pick up the phone and I say hello, and then there's just dead silence on the phone. And then all of a sudden there's a click because she knew the song that she was going to get. Well, the other thing that I want you to see, and I've already mentioned it, but men are stronger and women are weaker. And I want to show you this in the Word of God. Now, as I talk to you about these things, one of the things that I want you to understand is this, that because God created us, because you are a unique creation of God, then God understands you. He knows what you need. He knows and he understands the marriage relationship. And so you see in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, you husbands likewise live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel, since she is a woman. You know, one of the things that they discovered as women moved into factories in World War II, because the men were overseas and they were in the Army and in the Navy and in the Marines and fighting the wars, and women moved into the factories to make the supplies. They found out that they had to give women breaks much more frequently than they had to give men, because the women did not have the physical endurance, the brute strength, as I talked about, that men have. And so we are a weaker vessel. And you know what? Men love it. And men love it because they have an ego. And they are the protectors. They're the ones that want to nourish us. They're the ones that want to cherish us. They're the ones that feel like the man. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Yentl, speaking of movies. But in Yentl, you see this male-female difference so very clearly. Barbra Streisand wrote that story, and it was based on her Jewish background from her childhood. And Yentl was a girl who wanted so badly to discuss the Torah, to be with the men and to reason together. And women in that age just didn't do that. And so she disguises herself as a man. She binds up those breasts, she puts on this waistcoat, and off she goes. And she ends up in a yeshiva. And she begins to discuss and debate. And the man that takes her under his wings, just as a buddy, thinking that she's a man, all of a sudden she finds herself very, very attracted to him. You find them going to dinner as he's there with this sweetheart that he loves. The girl just looks at him. She doesn't, there's no deep theological discussions and debates in that. Eventually, Yentl is revealed as a woman. And this man likes Yentl a lot. But there's something about the softness of this woman. There's something about this responsive, weak woman that so appeals to her. And I don't mean weak in character or that, but just a feminine woman. And you see, it's something that we're losing today. We're losing the distinction between the sexes. And believe me, it's not working. Because you see what's happening in so many marriages. You see so many men or women walking out of the home. Why? They found someone else. They found someone that understands them. They found someone that they can communicate with. They found someone, so many times they say, I can't leave her. I can't leave her. She needs me. Now, this is the other woman. Well, what about the wife? Doesn't the wife need the husband? Yes. But all of a sudden, he feels needed. It's that male-female difference. He's the initiator. He's the stronger one. He's the head. He's the aggressor. And there's something very feminine about a woman that is a responder, a woman that sees her femininity and does not despise that. Well, there are other differences that I want to share with you too. Just some basic differences that will help you understand each other. A man sees the whole. Usually, now I'm talking about usually, okay? But usually the man sees the broad picture. The man sees the big picture. The woman sees the details. And understanding that he sees the whole and she sees the details even affects their conversations. I mean, he'll say, honey, how was your day? What did you do? Oh, I went shopping, and let's see, now where did I go shopping? First I went to Lowe's, and then after that, I went to Home Depot because you see, Lowe's didn't have what we needed, and, or did I go, I think I might have stopped at he doesn't care. He just wants to know, how was your day? Good or bad or ugly? I mean, that's all he wants to know. A man sees the whole picture. A woman will say, hey, did you notice that? And he didn't notice it. He doesn't notice the details. So you need to remember that as you're talking to one another, and you need to understand that those differences. Now, a man is very, very logical. A man just thinks logically, and he reasons this way. And many times women are very intuitive. I mean, he says this is the way it is, and he sees it in black and white and that, and the woman comes in, with her intuition. And she just knows, or she just feels, or honey, I'm sorry, but I just think, I just don't think that's the right move. Why don't you think it's the right move? I've got it all figured out. I don't know, there's just something that bothers me about it. And what we need to remember is, as we look at these differences, even if they're reverse, precious one, God put us together. Not because we are exactly alike. If we're exactly alike, we don't need a duplicate of ourselves. But He put us together as counterparts. We are counterparts, complementers, completers to one another, and not competers. Well, when you look at them, you'll find a man is very goal-oriented. You'll find a woman is more relationship-oriented. And I'm telling you that this can come out even in that intimate part of your sexual life. I mean, he's goal-oriented. He's got one thing on his mind. And he doesn't stop to build the relationship along the way. And when it comes to the bedroom, I'm telling you, a lot of it is mental. And for a man to achieve his goal of making love to his wife, he needs to think about that relationship bit. I mean, if he got angry with her in the morning and he left and he didn't call her from work and tell her that she was lovely or that she was wonderful or whatever, then it's very hard for her to respond. We need to understand this too in raising children. Understanding the differences. Man, woman, what's the difference? Well, the other thing that you can see is man many, many times is more objective and a woman is more subjective. I mean, you can be eating dinner and he can put a piece of meat inside of his mouth and just look at her and say, "Where'd you get this meat?" And immediately she's thinking, what's wrong? Did I cook it wrong? Did I season it wrong? What's wrong with it? And all he wants to know is, where did you get the meat? It probably tastes good. Where did you get the meat? Or how did you come up with this meal? But immediately she's subjective and it's coming back to herself. And if you can remember this in your conversations, if you can remember that when you come together, that there is a difference in the thinking process, there is a difference in goal and relationship orientation. A man makes decisions. He just makes decisions like that. Many times it takes a woman a longer time to make a decision. Now, and that's many times because the woman's not moving in the world. Now, I'm not talking about a woman that's out in the business world, because the scenario changes there because she learns to do this. But many times women need assurance. Many times they lack that self-assurance. Remember, they're more emotional. Remember that they are the weaker one. Remember that they are the responder. And because of all this, a woman needs that assurance. And I'm telling you, you need to work at your marriage. You need to understand, hey, there are differences. You know, when I think about the decisions of a man makes a decision, a woman lacks self-assurance, have you ever gone into your husband and said, oh, honey, which pair of shoes do you like the best? Which looks better, the red pair or the black pair with this outfit? And he looks at him and he says, he looks up, he's reading the newspaper or he's watching TV, and he says, either one of them. And he doesn't put down the newspaper. He doesn't stop looking at the TV. No, Jack, stop. Look, tell me, which one looks better, the red pair or the black pair? And he'll look at him and say, I think the red pair. She looks at him and she says, I'll wear the black. It doesn't matter. She just wants some sort of an answer, some sort of attention, and then she's going to wear what she thinks is best. But it's that kind of lack sometimes of self-assurance. The other thing that you will see is a man is more realistic. A woman is usually, now I have friends, and this is crisscrossed, but a woman is usually very idealistic. A woman will say, oh, let's drive down this street and let's look at this home. And he's saying, I'm telling you, we can't afford a new home. I know, honey, we can't afford a new home, but I just want to look at it. Oh, look, there's an open house. Let's go in. I'm telling you, we can't afford a new home. He's very realistic. She's idealistic. And so they walk in and she's standing there and she's saying, now, do you think our piano would look better here or over here? I mean, he's just absolutely panicked. There are differences. And the last difference that I want to share with you is this, that a man is more nomadic. And a woman, because she's relationship-oriented, likes to put her roots down. That's why it's easy for a man to move in his career. And it's harder for a woman because she's oriented to those relationships. Why can't a woman be like a man? Because God made us distinctively male and female.